Namaskar, Nileshok. Another session of Dr. No Shorts. In this session, that's number 11, I am going to discuss with you exciting evidence. In fact, this paper is so critical, so exciting, so rich in evidence that applies to multiple different facets of Hindu civilization, that 15-minute limit is not enough, but I'm going to restrict myself to 15 minutes. But somewhere in the Shraddha and Prajna series, I will do a longer session. I don't know how long it would be. It's important that you understand I do not extend anything. I do not stretch anything to create something longer. If I could do something in 5 minutes, that would be my preference. In fact, my preference is not to even say anything. Okay, that's why I have written 3 books. In fact, some of you may recall the 26 long astronomy simulation clip that I created 12 plus years ago. That summarizes 8 to 10 different pieces of astronomy evidence from the Mahabharata text. Only the problem is when I put it there, and even many times, not just once, I have written down all the verses related to that and says, guys, just enjoy. And, people are like, headlight, deer in front of headlights or something like that, headlight in deer's eyes and nothing happens. That's why I'm creating this. So very exciting evidence, but I am going to limit myself to 15 minutes. Again, the continuation of empirical, scientific, logical, archaeology, oceanography, sedimentology, seismology type of evidence from around the world that decisively shows that Bhagwan Krishna's Dwarka was flooded and destroyed by seawaters suddenly gushing into the city of Dwarka, like a tsunami-like phenomenon, okay, and flooding the city, destroying Dwarka, and very likely taking it under the sea. What we don't know is the altitude of Krishna's Dwarka 7,500 years ago when these sea waters came gushing in, because that also could have allowed us to estimate how fast some of the things might have happened. Not always, because the data is so ancient. We are talking something that happened more than 7,500 years ago. So there are limits on the data, limits on the narrations that have survived, and so on. Anyways, why only this paper is relevant? Now, so far, I have shared data, archaeology data from around the world, consistently aiming and cornering and nailing down this particular date, 5525 BCE, the middle of 6th millennium BCE, okay, for this sudden sea level rise. So this paper actually it verifies what we have covered so far in about 9 different shorts episodes. But this also emphasizes, as if it's not clear before. Of course, it is clear through multiple shorts episodes that we did on the archaeology data for the flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka. But this one, even in the decisive way, but also in a very articulate way, very I don't know what's the way to say, in a very articulate is the right word. Articulate way shows why not only it would happen in 5525 BCE, but why no other year besides 5525 BCE, besides 6th millennium BCE, besides middle of 6th millennium BCE, can be claimed as the year for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka. Okay, this will also pull us into a very important aspect of scientific acumen, Vijnana Buddhi. Logical reasoning is the necessary and also sufficient conditions. Okay, something is necessary but not sufficient. Okay, so we are going to look at that also. So why only 5525 BCE and no other date for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka? All right, let's get into it. I should express my gratitude to someone who is known in the Twitter world, at least, as Savitri Mumukshuji. All right. She brought, forgive me, Savitriji, she brought this paper to my attention. Okay. And, guys, I tell you, there is so many papers out there that even I have not accessed, and they keep on supporting this 5525 BC. It's not unusual at all that practically once every month, maybe 3-4 times every month, which is to say once every week, I will receive some additional papers. Okay. And I may discuss this, but as I said, at some point, the value of additional evidence in support of a claim, which is now, we have beaten it to death, let's say, doesn't add up much. There are many other interesting things that we need to discuss. So at some point, I will stop, but I wanted to, even just through this sheer number of episodes, I wanted to bring it to your attention, how rich and super rich is this evidence. Therefore, now it provides you a baseline, a platform when anytime a pseudo researcher comes up with totally fake evidence. So, totally fake evidence, meaning made up evidence in support of whatever the year he or she wants to claim for the flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka. You should able to, for yourself, for Swarthanuman, your own comprehension. Guys, don't be in a hurry to convince others. If you are not convinced about something, don't be in a hurry to convince others. That's true. And I'll talk about that in another time sometime, like Aryan invasion. Sometime on Twitter or Facebook, somebody will be having some discussion, and people will write to me on the sidelines in Facebook, says, Nileshji, somebody's asking this question. What should I respond? How nonsensical is this? If you don't know how to respond, why are you participating into that debate? My point is, focus first on comprehending yourself. Okay, whether the flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka in 5525 BC. Be convinced. If you are not convinced, no pressure, guys, to accept it. You can go with whatever you want to believe. Okay, because this is not about belief. This is about evidence. This is about pratyaksha. This is about pratyaksha, anumana, agamana, anumana, agama, pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, shabda, a triangulation in a scientific fashion, a quadrangulation, the way Krishna explains to Uddhava. Okay, let's get into this evidence. Now that I digress, it may go to 20 minutes. Okay, all right, and I'm not being apologetic about it. Okay, just mentioning it. Okay, so this paper was brought to my attention by Savitri Mumukshuji, and I'm very grateful. It's a phenomenal paper for the kind of data that is there. And as I said, I'll do a longer session on it. Even the way the nature did the miracle, as the kind of data that was captured in this cave on the tip of Sumatra island of Indonesia, by itself, it should give you goosebumps. Okay. But sometimes we are bombarded with the Bollywood so much that people don't know when to get goosebumps unless the narration of the Bollywood movie tells you now you should feel excited. Anyways, the title of the paper is Highly Variable Recurrence of Tsunamis in the 7,400 years before 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami. Okay, possibly the research was done in the context of 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami. Okay. Could be any reason, but what they have found is much more valuable than diamonds, gold, and platinum combined together, as it relates to Hindu civilization, Hindutva civilization, and therefore the world civilization, the humanity, and the well-being of humanity. Okay, let's get there. So where exactly it is? In the context of India, Bharatavarsha. Think of that tip of the Sumatra island, and that exactly same, I'm going to show you same location on the other map. This map, second map, is from that research paper. Okay, this research paper. Okay, and this is that gold, guys, or gold, platinum, and diamonds combined. Okay, this is it. what are we seeing? On the x-axis, we are seeing the time axis. We are starting on the left with our times and going back all the way as we go to the right to that 7,500 time period, the middle of 6 millennium BC. This is 7,500 before present. Okay. So like a 5,500. And remember, 5,525. I will not go into why the record begins here. That's the magic of nature. Coincidence, fine, but that's the mystery. Okay, either everything is a mysterious or nothing is mysterious. It's such a fabulous, fascinating evidence. It's for some very curious reasons, and I'll explain that in a longer session. The records for tsunamis begin with this flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka in 5525 BCE. The peak that you are seeing there, okay? So dated tsunami, and it's showing the extent of tsunami, like over how long possibly that lasted. And don't try to immediately connect with the width and the number of years, 1,000 years, anything like this. Just that normal distribution like curve, or the distribution curve, kind of tells you the intensity, the width, and so on. Don't read too much into it otherwise, okay? But this is the first record that got preserved in this cave in the area Aceh Banda, okay, of Sumatra. Okay, that is the same location for Toba explosion, by the way, 75,000 years ago, but I'll not digress there. So this is what you're seeing here is that tsunami evidence for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka in 5525 BCE. But that's not the most impressive part of this evidence, because we have seen enough evidence, sudden peak in 5525 BCE around the world. Okay, we have also seen how the water levels many times immediately went even further up, but then either they leveled off or they started coming down to our times. We have seen this consistently. This evidence is giving you in the form of tsunami records. And again, as I said, I'll discuss why only, as if only the tsunami records are getting preserved here, because of a unique location. And as I said, the magic of nature. We'll discuss that another time. Then what it shows is that, so for example, this is the first, the data begins with the time of Krishna's Dwarka's flooding and destruction, 5525 BC, that first peak here at the right, at the bottom. And now we are going backwards. I mean, we are going backwards, meaning from right to the left in this graph, as a time arrow of time, we are going forward. So coming from middle of 6 millennium BCE to our times. Okay. So what do we see now? So notice from, say, about that 7,000 before present to 5,500 years before present. What are you going to see? 5 additional events. Now I've taken that before present, subtracted 2,000 years to arrive at the BCE dating. So 5525 to 3,500 BCE. There are additional 5 tsunami events. The data was captured into this cave. Wonderful data. In the longer session, I'll show you share that additional data and how beautiful this work is. Okay. Phenomenal. I mean, congratulations to these researchers. But something interesting now. And this decisively falsifies not only this paper, by the way, guys, at least 6+ papers, and I will summarize it, okay? Decisively falsify anyone claiming Krishna's Dwarka being flooded and destroyed anytime between this period, 3,500 BC to 1,500 BC. And I will also show you why that cannot happen anytime after. But not many people are going to claim it, unless really some serious problem, with logical thinking and so on. But here, I mean, there should not have been anyone in this bucket also, anywhere between 3,500 to 1,500 BCE. Why? Because especially if you take 3,500 BCE to 2,000 BCE, not even a single evidence from a Mahabharata text I don't mean just astronomy, actually anything out of astronomy, 300 plus references, but all the non-astronomy evidence as it relates to Saraswati River, as it relates to seismology, as it relates to the seasons, as it relates to Panchanga, as it relates to anything, genetics, physical anthropology, none, not even a single piece of evidence allows anyone with a scientific mind, logical reasoning, empirical, somebody who understands empirical evidence to come anywhere between 3500 BC and 2000 BC. But there are, like God, 100 plus people, it's a crowded area. That's how upside down the Indic research is when it comes to the dating of Mahabharata. So guys, yes, the Western Indologists have created a lot of chaos, havoc and everything, but let's not just blame them. Our own folks have created enough of nonsense in this particular area. Now, this evidence, this is none of this is written by me, by the way, on the left side. This is coming from the paper. Look at that 2,164-year gap between what? 3,500 to 1,500 BC approximately. No evidence of tsunami. Okay, now this is in the what? Bay of Bengal, okay, that area, Indian Ocean. But guess what? That is very consistent around the world with all the oceanography, seismology, archaeology data, geophysics, geology data that we have. This is a decisive falsification of anyone claiming Mahabharata war and the destruction of Krishna's Dwarka anywhere from 3,500 BC to this 1,500 BC. Okay? Guys, if you don't understand it, you have to stop here. Those people who watch it, but also the other Mahabharata researchers, if you don't get this, stop asking me questions, okay? They don't ask, they run away. But I'm talking of the other audience member, the Mahabharata enthusiast, okay? Even you must understand this. It is that critical, okay? And then what happens? After 1500 BCE, so we are coming from 6 millennium BC to our times, there are clustered tsunamis. There is a evidence that is captured in this cave of clustered tsunamis, okay, next to each other around that time, 1500 BCE. Now, because of that, at some point, what I'm doing right now is Mandan, okay? I'm demonstrating worldwide decisive evidence for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka in 5525 BCE. At some point, people will start asking me questions like, oh, so what do you think of the date of Professor B.B. Lal? Like whatever 900 BC or whatever he decided. What do you think of the date of the claim of Professor Aryan Iyengar of 1478 BC? What do you think of sort of a hand-waving claim of Sri Srikant Talagiriji for the Mahabharata war 1400 BC? I mean, he never presented any evidence. And people ask me, what do I think? What do I think of the claim of Srikant Talagiriji of 1400 BCE? And people ask that because they see me praising his work on Veda. Yeah, I mean, he has done a tremendous work. But if people ask me, what do you think? I actually ask them, what do you think? Have you understood? Are you convinced? But if you ask me, I think it's utterly foolish claim, utterly nonsensical claim. And just watch my language. This is not a comment on Sri Srikant Talagiriji. I mean, he and me have met together multiple times. We have talked. We have sat together. I have a great respect. In fact, I talk a lot more about his research, Veda research, than even he himself possibly talks about it. That is not to be confused when some same person makes another claim. If it's foolish, if it's illogical, if it is unscientific, that needs to be called out. I ask individuals, researchers or otherwise, to call out if you find something that is unscientific, non-empirical, illogical in anything that I have done, my research, my books, my videos, my blogs, and actually people do. And if they are asking something sensible meaning they don't have to agree with me, but what they're saying makes sense, then I respond to it, and I respond to it in an open forum. Okay, all right. So This one is a decisive evidence that Mahabharata war and the destruction of Krishna's Dwarka did not happen any time between 3500 BC and 1500 BC. Now, is this like something, oh my God, now? No, this is a terrestrial evidence also showing it. As far as the astronomy evidence is concerned, 300 plus evidence, not even a single piece of evidence out of 300 plus astronomy descriptions from Mahabharata text. Any person with some decency and integrity about his or her scientific acumen, logical reasoning skills, empirical data skills, science skills will come and say, yes, this evidence takes us to 3500 BC to 1500 BC based on a Mahabharata evidence. I'm saying not even a single individual can do that. That's how precise, clear, crisp the evidence of Mahabharata is. All right. So cluster tsunamis, the reason I mentioned that is when I get into the khandan, like the questions that are asked, oh, what about, well, forget astronomy data, some people will say, what about the Dwarka exploration, like say Professor S.R. Rao, or who else? Name doesn't come to me right now, but say Professor S.R. Rao. And at some point I will do it. I mean, I don't need to do it, guys. I mean, somebody who asks a question, okay, what do you think of S.R. Rao's exploration of Dwarka? Have you looked at what he has done? What does his evidence say? How did he drew the logical conclusions? Okay, do something, guys. So anytime we have a sangshay, I mean, why are you asking? I have told you guys 5525 BCE, that is the year for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka, no other year. So when somebody asks a question, whether it's referring to Professor S.R. Rao, Professor R.N. Iyengar, Sri Talagiriji, Professor B.B. Lal, Dr. Pushkar Bhatnagarji, Saroj Bala, I mean, whoever, Vedvir Arya, Manish Pandit, Narari Achar, Konrad Elst also hand waves and says something 1400 to 1600 BC. Well, what is their evidence? So the sangshay, if you still don't trust this, I mean, if I say 5525 BC, no other date, that means all other dates are wrong. When I say 5561 BC is the year of Mahabharata war, I am saying all other dates are decisively false. Period. There are no ifs and buts. We are not talking this in terms of some statistical confidence interval. It appears to be in between. No, the evidence is that straightforward, that crisp, that empirical. There is no doubt left. But so therefore, if you want to ask, from an educational perspective, I want to respond to it as a part of education, is part of learning the process of how to do research, how to compare two claims. I'm willing to do it. But there has to be some input from your side other than lazily and in a very tamasic fashion asking the question, what I think of S.R. Rao's research, what I think of Srikant Talagiri's research. That has no meaning. Show me some evidence that you have consumed their research, you have understood something, and maybe something that you have not understood. And that is when you want to ask for my help. Okay, how can I explain what they might have done wrong? What might be the illogical aspect of their claim? What might be the unscientific aspect of their claim? What is the non-empirical aspect of their claim, non-scientific? That's where there is point in having this kind of discussion. Okay, so cluster tsunamis in 1500 BC. Yeah, anyone can take that tsunami and say, look, there is also tsunami. I mean, yeah, you are claiming 5525 BC, I understand. But look, here there is a tsunami. Why the Mahabharata war cannot happen there? Why the Krishna's Dwarka not be flooded and be destroyed by one of those tsunamis? That is when the discussion of necessary and sufficient condition comes into the picture. So some kind of terrestrial event, such as, say, a earthquake, a tsunami, or landsliding, land subsidence, something is possibly required, right, to explain the sudden flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka. That's understood. But therefore, you cannot just confuse the Karya Karana Bhav and look at any of the tsunami, such as, for example, what stops any fool from taking this 2004 tsunami? By the way, this last point that you are saying is a 2004 2004 tsunami, the data that is recorded in this cave in 2004, and asked the question, oh, well, why can't this is also a tsunami, why can't this be the time when Krishna's Dwarka was flooded and destroyed? Now people will laugh at that person, whoever says that. Oh, come on, 2004? Okay, I was there in 2004 and there is no Mahabharata happening here. Now how do we take that same logic and apply it to, say, this group here? Okay, the cluster tsunamis. Again, the same thing, especially 1500 and after. Okay, there is again not even a single piece of evidence, single description, astronomy or non-astronomy in nature, from the Mahabharata text, in the Mahabharata text, that can be empirically tested, objectively analyzed, logically analyzed in a scientific fashion to arrive at anywhere 1500 BC or after. And I already said, nothing between 3500 BC to 2000 BC, or say 4000 BC to 2000 BC. That middle 2000 year period, not even a single description, reference, astronomy, non-astronomy in the Mahabharata text that can allow anyone to claim it. But then now the surprise. So why are there 100 plus Mahabharata researchers, and even now possibly 30, 40 living individuals, okay? Not even an anti-India camp, not even a breaking India camp, even a so-called pro-India camp, claiming the year of Mahabharata war that falls between 3500 BC and 2000 BC or 1500 BC. I mean, same thing, guys, doesn't matter. I'm saying anything after 4500 BC is not possible. So when I say anything after 4500 BC not possible, I say that with the help of a very specific reference, such as Bhishma Nirvana, such as Arundhati Vasishta, and many more. But when I say that, and those people who don't have a scientific acumen, don't have a Vijnana Buddhi, they start thinking, oh, so does that mean you are not so sure about your 5561 BC? No, that's why you have to understand how science works. That's why you have to build scientific acumen, build Vijnana Buddhi. When I say Mahabharata war is not possible anytime after, say, 4508 BC, that is based on Arundhati Vasishta. When I say Mahabharata war is not possible anytime after 4636 BC, that is also based on Arundhati Vasishta observation as analyzed and refined with a new data by someone like Chabra. I forgot his first name right now, Chabraji, in 2019. When I say Mahabharata war is not possible anytime after 5125 BC, that is based on Bhishma Nirvana evidence combined with the first day of the Mahabharata war, the lunar month of the Mahabharata war, the duration of Bhishma on the bed of arrows, and all of this. Nothing is possible after 5125 BC. Now, does that mean I'm not so sure about 5561 BC? No, I'm sure about 5561 BC. How did I come up with 5561 BC? Based on the planetary evidence. And look, I did not discuss planetary evidence to say nothing is possible after 45 BC, nothing is possible after 4636 BC, nothing meaning Mahabharata war is not possible after these dates, or Mahabharata war is not possible after 5125 BC. Okay, so these are the nuances, and it's just amazing. Once you guys get into this, you will not need any entertainment. You don't need to watch Game of Thrones. Okay, when you analyze this data, the kind of excitement you get is much more than a Game of Thrones. I'm just using Game of Thrones as an example. Okay, but it could be anything that you like, in the entertainment industry. All right, so cluster tsunamis, one can of course pick it and say, hey, why can't this be the year for the flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka? The reason is no Mahabharata evidence supports it. So a tsunami, a earthquake, tsunami, and or earthquake or some kind of a natural event, land subsidence, these are some of the necessary conditions for explaining flooding, sudden flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka, but they are not sufficient. Remember, we are talking of not just some place Dwarka. Like right now, there are 3-4 Dwarkas in Gujarat. You have the Dwarka where Krishna Mandir is. Then if you start driving from there all the way down towards Somnath, you're going to come across one Mula Dwarka. Then once you cross Somnath and you further continue to the south, you are going to arrive at another Mula Dwarka. And somewhere we will look at why there are multiple Mula Dwarkas and multiple Dwarkas. Okay, but that is, so therefore the tsunami, earthquake, something, land subsidence, yes, those are necessary conditions. They are not sufficient conditions. You still need evidence. That's why that Shabda Praman, Agama, background knowledge, okay, Shruti, Smruti, Aitihya. That's what Krishna is talking about. Shruti, Pratyaksham, Aitiyam, Anumanam, Chatushtayam, the quadrangulation, Pramaneshu Anvasthanat, Vikalpatsa Virajyate. Otherwise, your knowledge is always going to be tentative. It's always going to be unstable. You are always going to have a samshay. Okay, so when I say 5561 BC, I do not have any samshay in my mind. When I say 5525 BCE for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka, I have no samshay whatsoever. But when I say, hey, based on this, it corroborates, it validates, we can show a corroboration. That is the language of science. And the language of science, language of Nyaya Darshana, is a humble language. It is fearless, it's also humble. Abhayam sattva saushuddhir, but also amanita. It's fearless in making a conjectures. It's fearless in doing the hard work, fearless in doing the tapasya, but it's willing to be wrong. I'm willing to be wrong. But just because I'm willing to be wrong doesn't make me wrong. I mean, these are some of the subtle things that people have to understand. Again, beautiful, beautiful evidence here. And the last tsunami record that got captured in this particular cave, we don't know what will happen when next time another tsunami happens, whenever that happens, if this cave would able to capture that evidence or not. That depends on many different factors. All right. Okay. So very, very good evidence, impressive evidence. So let's do quick summary. We started with the Black Sea, then Caribbean, then we went to Great Barrier Reef, then we went to the North Sea. Okay, then we went to the east coast of United States. Then we went to the Kingdom of Champa. Okay, that's modern day Vietnam. Then we went to the east coast of India, Pumpuhar, Tamil Nadu. Okay, then we looked at the west coast of Australia, Barrow Island. Then we, of course, this is the most important, of course, guys, Dwarka itself. Okay, the area of Dwarka. And today we looked at Aceh Banda in Indonesia. There is much more evidence, and depending on the time, I will do a few shorts. But as far as the Mandan goes, purely based on archaeology and oceanography type of data, sea level rise data, this completes it. Okay, I may do a short episode on seismology data, like why Krishna had, there were harbingers, there were signals that, hey, these Dwarka may go underwater, okay? And the evidence comes from seismology. So it's not like suddenly they felt the ocean is going to, come and devour Dwarka. There were enough evidence beginning 20,000 years in the past. We know that. But we'll look at the seismology data. And then I wish to get into the khandan of some of the, not all, most of the claims are not even worth discussing. But some of them, in spite of a very mediocre or less than mediocre quality of a data, have attained their own celebrity. So I will take few claims from that bucket, and we'll discuss it as a khandan for any other date for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka, and therefore, by extension, for the year of Mahabharata war. All right, so that's all I have. Let me see if I have a summary slide. Yes. Summary, 10 incidents, we discussed those, of distinct empirical archaeology, oceanography type of data from around the world in pointing to 5525 BCE. 6 of these 10 incidents decisively falsify the sudden sea level rise anytime between 3500 BC and 1500 BCE. So not only the today's data point, but today it is so distinct because it's not talking about the sea level rise, but it's talking about specific tsunamis. Okay, so therefore it made it distinct because sea level is kind of always rising, in last 20,000 years. All the data decisively falsifies either local events like local to Dwarka or tsunami-like events anytime between 3500 BC and 1500 BC. Again, not only today's data, all the previous 9 episodes related to Krishna's Dwarka, they also exactly say the same thing, but in a different language. 7 out of 10 incidents demonstrate precise, accurate, and consistent sea level rise and sea level rise and fall. Okay, so 7 out of 10 incidents demonstrate precise, accurate, and consistent sea level rise and fall measurements around the world. Rise in the middle of 6th millennium BCE, sometime further rise going beyond that 5525 BCE by say 5000 BCE, but then leveling off and then actually coming down, falling. That's important point. Okay, that's around the world. Krishna's Dwarka was destroyed by sudden sea level rise, tsunami-like phenomenon in 5525 BCE. All right, this was a longer episode, about 35 minutes. So keep it in mind that I do put a timer. But if I have a choice, restricting myself in some kind of artificial block like 10 minutes and 5 minutes and 15 minutes versus sometime, if I need 35 minutes, I need 35 minutes. I'm going to go with 35 minutes. Again, I'm just sharing that with you so you know what goes in the back of my mind when sometime I will call it Dr. No Shorts and an episode will, or the particular session would go for 30 plus minutes. All right. Namaskar. I will see you shortly in another session of Dr. No Shorts or Shraddha and Pradnya series.